Hey, what's going on, guys? Thanks for joining me today. Appreciate you jumping in here and checking this out. Today, we're going to go through installing Docker on a brand new Ubuntu instance on DigitalOcean. We're going to lock that instance down a little bit, do some best practices, just very high-level best practices. We're going to get Docker CE installed and tested, and then we're going to throw a Docker GUI on there just so it's a little bit easier to manage Docker if you're not familiar with the domain specific language of the command line for Docker. Just makes it a little bit simpler. Um, like to shout out DigitalOcean for not sponsoring this message, but at least giving me an opportunity to earn some cash back on this. So click the link in the description. Excuse me. Can't talk this morning. If you don't have a DigitalOcean account already, you'll get $50 free to use for 30 days. And I'll get a little taste of that once you go ahead and sign up and spend some money. So any help that you could give there, it's appreciated. Helps the channel out a ton. Helps me keep making these videos. All right, let's jump into it. So we are going to install Docker CE. So we're going to spin up a droplet, as they're called in DigitalOcean parlance. And we're going to basically set that droplet up real quick, and then we're going to install Docker, and then we're going to put the GUI on top. So let's get into it. So once you're in your DigitalOcean console, you're going to click Create Droplet. Doesn't need a lot of horsepower, depending on what you're running, obviously, but just this standard instance, and even most of the testing that I do, you could really get away with a $5 or $10, unless you're doing some heavy stuff, and you'll obviously see the CPU spike if you need more. But I'm just going to start with a $10 a month. Note this is billed hourly, so if you only run it for 2 hours, it's cents. It's going to cost you like 3 cents or something like that, which is pretty sweet. Great for testing. And we're not going to do backups. We're not going to add an additional volume. We're going to choose New York region because that's closest to me. I always turn on private networking because if I wanted to add other instances, droplets, and I want those to communicate over private networking instead of public, so I always enable that. I don't mess with the IPv6 too much. Um, and you can enable monitoring, but that's not something we need to do here. And you'll have to have added an SSH key. I'll do another video on that another time, but you could just Google how to create an SSH key. You'll upload the public key to here, which I've already done, so I'll just select that, and then I'll just give this a name, and uh, and we'll add this to the MJ dev. I just have some workspaces over here so I can keep it clear. So we'll go ahead and create that. That should take seconds to create. Now, what else you're going to need is some sort of way to SSH into this box. So you could, if on Windows, you can use PuTTY. I have Windows Subsystem for Linux installed, so I actually have Ubuntu running here. And so I'm actually going to use Ubuntu to jump to SSH into this instance once it's up and running. Let's go ahead and get into here so you can see it's up and running. Oh, there we go. Come on, you can do it, buddy. There we go. Okay. The struggle is real this morning. All right, so we're going to do SSH minus I dot SSH. This is just where I have my RSA file. Might be different for you. Root at that. We're going to add that in. And just like that, we are in our cloud instance. So first thing we're going to do is to create a new user. Uh, so a non-root user on here. So we're going to do add user MJ, give that guy a password, just MJ, boom, boom, boom. Yes, that's correct. All right, and now we're going to do user, or no, sorry, add user MJ sudo, and we're going to do user mod minus AG sudo MJ. Sorry, if you see me glance over, it's just because I have notes because otherwise I get confused. So now we're going to become the user MJ. So you can see that before I was root and now I'm MJ, which is cool. And we're going to make dir, so we're going to create the SSH folder for the authorized keys file. So I can log into the server as MJ and not as root. So we're going to go home, mj slash, and we want to create a folder called directory, sorry, Windows land directory called .ssh. And then we will exit out of there, and we're going to copy the authorized keys from the root user. So if you go to here, I'm at the root user. So if we look at the present working directory, I'm /root/ssh, and you do ls in here, there's an authorized keys file in here. We're going to copy that into the mj user. So that's what this command does. cp root.ssh authorized keys, copy that to home/mj authorized keys. And then we need to shown that the authorized keys so the mj user owns them. So that's just shown mj uh, to that authorized keys file in the mj home directory. So that's done. So now if I exit out of here and simply go back and change this command to mj instead of root, should, yeah, look at that. And then if I do sudo su, now I'm the root user. So mj, I log in as mj and I can sudo into root user, but I don't, not always root user, which is nice. All right, so that's sort of the basic setup there. You could do some additional things like restrict the SSH user from being able to, I'm sorry, restrict the root user from being able to SSH into the system. You can enable the firewall, the UFW firewall, or install fail to ban to block like unauthorized SSH attempts. I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I'm actually going to leverage the DigitalOcean firewall to basically prevent unauthorized access to this instance. So I'll show you that in just a minute here, but let's go ahead and get Docker installed first. And so you're going to want to go to the official Docker Docs website, and there's a Ubuntu install. The first thing you're going to want to do, just give this a read through before you start doing anything. I'm going to skip over a lot of this stuff in here, but one of the main things that you're going to do is make sure that, sorry, one of the first things anyway, is that you're going to want to make sure that there's no other stuff installed. A lot of cloud providers will pre-install some older version of Docker. We don't want that around, so running this sudo apt-get remove and removing all these things, make sure it's a clean slate before we get started. Now, if you scroll down, you can basically set up the repo. So I've already done some of this stuff, but we can go ahead and do this now. Um, So we ran an apt-get update. Then we're going to install these pieces. So apt transport, HTTPS, CA certificates curl, GNU PG agent, and software properties common. So let's go ahead and get those installed. Yes, I do want to install them. Go for it. The next thing is to add the official Docker GPG key. So this is basically going to let you verify that this package is the official package. So we'll go ahead and paste that command. And then this next one is simply to evaluate that. Make sure that it is added to the system and it is valid. Boom, good to go. All right, so that's the main setup part. Now we need to add the repository to download Docker from. So that's what this piece is. So again, you're just going to copy and paste this. Nothing too crazy there. Uh, and the next piece is once that's added, you just run an update and you'll be able to install Docker. Now, I'm going to install the latest, but there are instructions here to install specific versions if that's what you need. If you don't know what you need, go ahead and install the latest. It's best practice. It's going to have all the security updates, all the uh, the fixes, bug fixes, and everything that you need in there. So now I've run sudo apt-get update, and it's added basically that repository. So it's aware of these items now. So now the final piece is to install, well, of the installation of Docker specifically is to install Docker CE, Docker CE CLI, and Containerd, which is what Docker runs on top of to actually manage the containers. So we'll go ahead and run that. Yes, I would like to install that. This should all be pretty quick. I mean, you can see that I'm not speeding this video up or anything. It's just doing what it does here. Um, and this should actually go ahead and complete as expected without any issue here. You can see that that's doing some stuff here. And once this is done, we should be able to essentially run Hello World to test that Docker is successfully installed. So um, this takes not long at all. And if you're looking to automate this, you could do it using Cloud Init, or you could manage this using something like Ansible, um, so that you're not manually doing this. But when you're just getting going, just getting set up, just trying to spin up a dev box, this is an easy way to do that. And there you go. You can see it's done. And so now if I run Docker run hello dash world, you can see it says unable to find it locally, pulls it down from Docker Hub, and runs it hello from Docker. So this is basically saying Docker is running as expected. You can see that the container ran and exited to completion here. Good to go. No problems there. So now, remember before I added the um, sorry, I added the MJ user, so I can actually back out back into the MJ user and do sudo docker run hello dash world, and there you go. It runs it because I was able to use the root user, but right now Docker is only able to run as root. So we're going to do some post install steps, which are actually available at the bottom of the page here. If you go to the post installation steps for Linux, um, one of the things you're going to do is to add a group called Docker. That's likely that that already exists, but we'll go ahead and just run that again. There you go. Group Docker already exists. No big deal. Now we will add the user that I am to the Docker group so that I can run Docker commands uh, without using sudo. So now if I do Docker run hello world as MJ without using sudo, then sorry. I need to exit out because I added that new permission in. Duh. All right, so now if we do that, hey, look at that. So no sudo needed. I can do Docker run hello world. We also want to make sure that that Docker starts up automatically when the system's rebooted. Um, you can see here that you just need to run the system control enable Docker, and it'll go ahead and do that for you. But, forgot I wasn't root. I run as root way more than I should. Don't do that. There we go. So now that's enabled, and you can do essential status status Docker. You can see it's running, looks good to go. So that's the basic setup of getting that up and going. That's Docker installed. You're basically done. You're ready to start running Docker stuff. So if you have some containers you want to run, have at it. I do some additional pieces here to make it a little bit easier to manage for people beginning, or even if you just wake up tired and you're not your brain's not processing the Docker commands, and eventually you'll get it. It'll become second nature to you. But you know it's always good. I don't know. I think it's always good to have a GUI. I get a lot of frowns from like hardcore Docker folks, like, oh, how could you be installing a GUI? It's not necessary. You can do everything from command line. Like, come on, man, just take it easy. I'm trying to make this easy to do for everyone. So um, I'm sure I'll get some of that in the comments, in fact. But for now, we're going to go ahead and move on. So the GUI I'm going to install is called Portainer, and you'll see that it's super simple to do. So you go to portainer.io and you click the Get It Now button, and it's super easy to deploy. First thing we're going to do is to create a volume. Um, Here you go, called Portainer data. And please make note of this. You are going to, uh, so Docker runs as root. The docker.sock is like basically a socket file that runs all of Docker. So that socket file and everything that it does to the OS runs as root. So pay attention. You're actually going to be attaching Portainer to docker.sock. So what that means is that if someone gets unauthorized to access to Portainer, then they will essentially have root on your system. So be aware of that. I Because of the lockdown we're going to do, it's not that big of a deal to me, but just be aware that that's what you're doing. Don't walk into this blind. I wanted to give you a heads up on that. So we're going to run Docker run. Uh, we're going to expose it on 9000. We're going to mount docker.sock and we're going to mount Portainer data. And we'll go ahead and hit enter and it'll download Portainer latest and install that. Now it's done. Like just that quick, now we have Portainer installed. So if I go back here and uh, pop into here, paste that in and go to 9000, there's actually a GUI running for Portainer now. So we're going to go ahead and create an admin user. There you go. Boom. In this case, we're not managing something remote, so we're not managing another production endpoint somewhere else. We're just doing the local. We've already mounted the docker.sock. So if I click connect, there you go. Um, there you go. So you can see it's connected to local. It sees 2 images, 3 networks, 4 containers, including Portainer. So Portainer is actually managing itself and the volume that we created. You know, what it's showing here is essentially what you can see in here. So if you go docker ps -a, you can see all of these containers and the only one is running is Portainer. That's what's shown here. 3 containers not running, 1 container is running called uh, that's the Portainer container, as well as like Docker volume ls. You can see that there's a local volume called Portainer data. And if you come back into here and click on that volume, look at that, Portainer data. And you can click on that and drill down and see like where that's mounted. So you can see that's var lib docker volumes Portainer data, all that kind of stuff. So this is just, it's symbiotic, right? You're going to want to learn the domain specific language to be able to learn all this stuff from the command line, but also Portainer just makes it a little bit easier for you to install that stuff. I'm sorry, to see those things. Um, and the last thing we're going to do, as I mentioned earlier, is I don't do the firewall and stuff in the OS level. So I actually do that on the hosting level. So in this case, we're going to go into networking um, uh, in DigitalOcean and go to firewalls. And we're going to create a new firewall called Docker Lockdown. You can call this whatever you want. Um, and so so then we're gonna want to lock down SSH. So you'll go to, what's my IP, grab your IP address and paste that in there. Make sure that when you paste it, you actually click. It's not added when you just paste it. You actually have to click, and now it's added. A little bit weird. And we're also going to lock down that 9000 port, right? Because we don't want just anybody being able to get to that. Uh, and so we'll lock that down. But we may want to allow, HTTP and HTTPS in here to the whole world because we're probably going to run a web server. Let's say we're running WordPress or whatever else. So any other services that you need, sort of the general public, all other IP addresses to be able to access, you're going to need to open that in here once we apply this firewall. So you can see I've got 80 and 443 added to all IPv4 and IPv6 addresses and 22 and 9000 are locked down only to me, which is great. And now we're going to add this droplet. I think we called it Docker test one. There you go. And now we create that firewall. Docker lockdown is in place. So now if I go here and we open a new browser window here, and I try to hit Portainer using that because now I'm going through the Tor network By the way, Brave browser is awesome if you don't already use it. But basically, uh, if I do my IP, I'm actually not going to get my IP. I'm actually going to get a Tor exit node IP. Um, Come on, you can do it. See, this is not the IP address I had earlier. This is some Tor exit node. And to prove that it is locked down, I'm going to go here and try to access Portainer. Um, that shouldn't have worked. Why did that? Of course, that's the way it goes. Did I set the firewall up wrong? Docker lockdown just now. Custom TCP 9000 is only that. What did I do? Oh, you know what? It's probably using it's actually not using my other IP address. It's actually using my local to access this because the other session already had it. Anyways, if I were to use a VPN or be on some other device, it wouldn't be able to access this. That was a poor example. It actually already knew about this session and went through the direct route instead of the Tor exit node. But here you go. Hope this helps you. Hope this gives you some information. Again, appreciate you guys watching. Links in the description to all the things I talked about, including your way to get your 50 free dollars on DigitalOcean. Also, you can go check out docker.guru website if you want to see some more of this stuff. Follow us on social media, all that good stuff. Anyways, appreciate you watching, and I will talk to you guys later. See you.